My name is Billy Mayfield, Mayor, City of Hayes.
Roxanne O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem.
Hannah Ballou.
Cornell Strawn.
Candace Blake.
Tony Valdez.
Great. And then I want to introduce everyone sitting up here. Our guests.
Veronica Rivera, Assistant City Attorney.
Don Rosshuber, City Engineer.
Jeff Howard, attorney for Milestone.
Andrew Cortez with Milestone Community Builders.
Sean Brewster, Milestone Community Voters.
Great, thank you. All right, we're on all rise. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. Right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Agenda 3 public comments. Comments will be taken from the audience on non-agenda related topics. The City Council will make no comments and take no action during public comments. These comments will be limited to 5 minutes each. And no, Ms. Catherine Nichols, you wanted to go first with some time constraints, is that correct?
Well, if the presentation's going to happen before I have to leave, I'd rather hear the presentation and then speak to it.
Okay.
But I guess I'm taking my chances.
Well, yeah, so we're doing public comments right now. So you wanted to talk about,
I think I'll
discuss it
just
for
stay
8.
with the agenda item and speak then.
What's that? Okay. So agenda 4, specific. Okay, well, here's one. Ms. Barbara Reeves seems to be a public comment, non-agenda item.
I'm going to pass for now.
Pass? Okay, so, Luther.
Goodness, Henry.
Was that quickly whether or not the milestone item is considered an agenda item or not?
Yes, yes, this is just like general statements, if you wanted to read something off or, you know, go over your say, but it's more directed towards the agenda. This is just, you know, you want to get something out there. I guess I'll just assume all these are part of the workshops, and those are actually limited to 3 minutes. So you know that, right? Okay, so those are 3 minutes each instead of 5 minutes for public comments. Okay. All right, so there's no public comments. We're going to close this out.
Actually, I wanted to do a public comment.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Patterson,
Yes. That's what they call my dad.
do you want, is that working?
No, actually, I'm turning the microphones off because if this is blaring and you're talking level, it screws up my video. Okay. So, 3 minutes. I talked to Garrett, and I really am hoping that he'll see the fight over water is not worth the squeeze, the juice. It's just not. If Milestone does 1 acre lots and does them in an amazing eco thing, you can do eco pavement, you can do eco parking lots that are, wouldn't that go a long way? Sticking with your 1 acre haze requirements to clean up some of the bad hub that Milestone's getting. There are so many millionaires living in Austin that would die to be at the corner of 45 and 1626 because they work in one of the high rises downtown, but they want a 1 acre lot. They can't get that downtown. All I'm saying is, why go through all the fight and the trouble when you could do an alternative that would raise your public image? And all I'm saying is, if you gotta go to 1/4 acre lots, you've seen what I did with Pursuit. I'm not going away till I die. You're messing with my water now. You were messing, you were messing with traffic safety, and you're gonna do that road. And I'm ready to back off, but I don't run the city council. But you mess with my water, you ain't seen nothing yet. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Patterson. I'm just gonna, so we had some sign-ins in this sheet. I just want to clarify this. Ms. Janine Tinsley, is that an agenda item?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Teresa Lemon, agenda item. Mr. Mike Clifford,
Yes.
agenda item. Yep. And then Darlene Starr.
Can we get clarification, because it seems like a change of rules, we've been giving public comments on Milestone, that has been on the agenda at every meeting here before. I'm curious why the change in rule this time. People
'cause-
clearly showed up for this agenda.
That's written into the city codes. That
But
they're
it's
doing
not
it right
following that
So-
for both meetings.
Yes, and we are on a time constraint too, but we'll try to get through all of these. If there's time enough, we'll certainly open that up a little bit, but again, we're just following city codes.
That you haven't followed in any meeting up until this point. Just for the record, because Milestone's been on the agenda, it's a standing agenda on the, it's a standing item on the agenda every meeting, and everyone has been giving public comments on Milestone after the meeting. This is the first time we've ever done that. And all these people came for this.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we're going to move on to agenda 4, workshop session, receive update and discuss the development agreement with Hayes Commons Lands Investments LP.
But we don't have a microphone, whatever.
Public comment, Mr. Jim Camp. If you want to approach.
Would you mind reading A loudly so everybody knows?
Yeah, read it again. Yes. Receive update and discuss the development agreement with Hayes Commons Land Investments.
Mayor, City Council, thank you very much for having the meeting, the workshop. My name is Jim Camp, and my wife and I, Elizabeth, built a home 38 years ago in Southwest Territory on Bear Creek, just on the other side of Chaparral Park. I've spoken to you all since February. Thank you for all coming. It's good to see some of these folks. Our kids went to school K through 12 many years ago, and they care about the community, and I think you'll hear that tonight. It's odd that this land, the 300 plus acres that is part of the development agreement and the MUD proposal and such, was originally owned by Randy Marine Builders. They bought the land in the 80s. They proposed a MUD, high density drilling from the aquifer and discharging into Bear Creek in the recharge zone. The city of Austin said no. They went all the way to the TCEQ, and the TCEQ said no. Basically, I wanted to just say that thank you for General Manager Tim Loftus being here as part of the Springs Edwards Aquifer Conservation District. Today, I think the district just announced that we're going into stage 3 of the drought. We're in serious shape. We haven't had rain. We haven't had recharge. But, you know, you all probably know that the city of Austin in the Barton Springs district did a watershed or a groundwater tracing study on 3 places in Little Bear Creek. Fence Line Sink, Dahlstrom Cave, and the Stone Ledge Quarry. It shows, and the scientific data shows, that the dye tracing they did shows up at Barton Springs in high flow conditions in 2 to 5 days. Of course, our wells are nearby. We have 75 wells in Shepherd Park, Southwest Territory. Marbridge and some of these other folks can tell you about their individual wells in the area. So I wanted you all to just understand that it's not just the development with Milestone, it's the impacts of putting a TLAP, wastewater disposal, in the recharge zone. And there's also a study that people should look at that was done in December 2008. It's a karst study that lists all the karst features like caves and sinkholes on this land and in the 60 acres where they propose to disperse the wastewater. So that could impact our wells and definitely could impact Barton Springs. So perhaps I'll address the other issues later if I get a
You
moment
have
to
30
speak.
seconds. Yeah.
Thank you,
You can
Mayor.
speak on the agenda items.
I appreciate the time, and I'm hopeful that others will also speak of their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carol Pennington, you wanted to make a comment?
Thank you. My name is Carol Pennington, and I live in Chaparral Park off of Bliss Filler. Hayes Commons is directly affects Chaparral Park because of the north entrance to Hayes Commons. Thank you. Is the only entrance to our country neighborhood. I am speaking mostly to Milestone because there have not been any public meetings with you since the first one last November. The City of Hayes has heard my comments several times since last November, and I appreciate them for all their hard work. I have been researching this proposed development for almost 2 years, and this should not be built as proposed. I'm not saying that I don't want it built at all. I am not anti-development. But this development should be built with the property and not against it. By now, everyone knows that 95% of this property is located on the Barton Springs portion of the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. There are at least 60 sensitive environmental features consisting of karst, sinkholes, caves, faults, and fracture zones. Rainfall uses these environmental features to get into the aquifer. There is no filtration for this water. This aquifer is the drinking water for many people who live out here. In Chaparral Park alone, there are over 75 private water wells, plus a 200-acre family farm that gets their water from the Edwards Aquifer. The rest are on community wells from the Trinity Aquifer. Then you have the City of Hayes, Hayes Country Oaks 1 and 2, Elliott Ranch, Leisure Woods, Southern Woods, Oxbow, Huntington Oaks, and many others along Farm to Market Road 1626 who are all on private water wells. Buda even gets half of its drinking water from the Edwards. It is our lifeline. The proposed TLAP wastewater dispersal is the worst thing that can be put on the proposed location. There are over 36 environmental features, a small creek that floods after 3 inches of rain, and at least one tributary creek on this section of land where you want to spread treated wastewater that has the potential to go directly into the Edwards Aquifer and our drinking water. This is the most irresponsible and negligent plan and needs to be drastically changed. On top of the problem with dispersing the treated wastewater around the creeks and karst, you want to use this discharge area as parklands. It is all native and virgin habitat. Who would want to walk along trails with treated wastewater effluent? Not me, and probably not anyone here tonight. This is if you don't destroy the native and virgin habitat slated for the parklands by installing the TLAP. A much cleaner and safer system for the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone is a decentralized effluent sewer system where 4 or 5 houses are connected to one tank and has to be pumped out every 10 to 12 years. This can be included in the price of the home and less expensive and definitely less maintenance.
Ms. Pennington, your time is up. You can continue on 4B though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Barbara Reeves?
Pass, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Moving on to Mr. Jeff Kaufman.
Well, Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing folks to come tonight and to address you and talk about this really important development that's going on. I moved to this area in 1984 when Buda was about the size the city of Hayes is right now. And in those last many years, Buda has changed a lot. It has directed the growth and development to the extent it could. And it has maintained an environment that is somehow protected and is also growing. And I think that you have an opportunity right now to do something similar. You're not a city as Buda is with as many established businesses and that kind of things, but you are certainly in a condition to be able to start from this point right now and consider how you want to be in the future and imagine that future and grow in that direction. Milestone is attempting to steamroll Buda, and it's attempting to steamroll you. You don't have the resources, I don't believe, to stand up to this giant corporation and to make your case. One of the things you can do is to call a timeout, don't make any decisions, get some help. Buda has put out a 36-page development agreement. I haven't seen your development agreement. I hope to learn about it tonight. But it consists of so many things that are so detailed and so critically well thought through that they've left no stone unturned, so to speak. And this is something that I would encourage you to do. You may have some resources you could put toward getting such an agreement developed, and then you have a negotiating tool. Everything from roads to water to ingress, egress, and everything in between. The commercial side and the homeowner side of the development. Then you have a line-by-line, item-by-item negotiating tool that you and Milestone can go through and come up with some workable arrangements. I also know growth is going to happen. I knew that when I came to Buda, and I know that now. And it is a desirable location, as Hades is as well. And we're all connected. The water underneath the surface connects us all. The air above the surface connects us all. And we need to work together to make sure that we grow in a responsible and in a way that is going to be a way that we're going to be looking back 20, 30, 40 years from now and saying, we did it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. We're going to go on to Ms. Debbie Bates.
Yeah, hello. I want to thank you, Mayor and Council, for having this workshop tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. My husband Bill and I have lived and raised our family here in Buda for the past 40 years. I'm a board member of the Hayes Country Oaks II Homeowners Association. We are in the city of Hayes, ETJ, as I'm sure you know. Our subdivision has 96 homes, which are located on 1 to 8 acre lots. Most of them are on 3 to 4 acres. We all have a sole source water well in the Edwards Aquifer. We all are very near or adjacent to Little Bear Creek. We have 0 options for city water if our wells become contaminated. Nothing. You know, we don't have the option to tie on to another water source. So what I'm asking you is please do not approve the developer's request for a variance on density or their MUD, which proposes spring treated sewage near our wells. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Next is Ms. Michelle Camp.
My colleague and I are delivering a joint address, and this person, if he goes before me, he's Brian Zabchek in the comments, and I'll distribute this letter while he begins, and then I'll follow in later, if that's okay. Sorry about the order there.
Yeah,
That's okay.
that'll work. Okay, we are recognizing Mr. Brian Zabchek.
Hi, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. My name is Brian Zabchik. I'm the Advocacy Director at State Park and Creek Association. We were founded in 1979, making us one of the oldest citizens environmental groups, not only in the area, but in the entire state of Texas. We're also, too, a member of the No Dumping Sewage Coalition, which is also two functions. It's the wastewater subcommittee of the Texas Hill Country Conservation Network. Our coalition has many members, organizations in this area, including the Safe Our Springs Alliance to the north, the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association to the west, San Marcos River Foundation to the south, and Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance also to the south. We have to say that we're opposed to this development, specifically to the proposal for a municipal utility district, because that automatically means that Milestone will be filing for a Texas land application permit to dispose of wastewater on site. There are two different ways that you can go ahead and dispose of wastewater. One is by discharging in the stream. The other is by land application. SBCA and our affiliate groups generally prefer TLAP, but it's called, but not every land application permit is suited for the location. And this location for the Milestone development is particularly ill-suited for two reasons. One, it is over the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone, and two, it straddles Little Bear Creek, which is a tributary of Onion Creek. The reason that land application permits are not a good idea in sensitive areas is because the treated wastewater doesn't always stay where it's supposed to. It is very common for the irrigation fields to get oversaturated, which means that the water that continues to be applied onto the field will then flow off, making the land application facility, in essence, a discharge facility. This is not a hypothetical. This has actually happened several times with the city of Dripping Springs, which has a land application facility for its municipal treatment. TCEQ, this is TCEQ itself, the state's environmental agency, cited Dripping Springs on November 14th and 15th of 2016. An inoperable valve led to overflow on irrigation zones and caused a discharge of approximately 26,000 gallons of treated wastewater to flow off-site onto adjacent properties and into a tributary of Onion Creek. TCQ again cited Dripping Springs in 2018 for failure to prevent an authorized discharge, failing to prevent pooling and ponding in the drip irrigation field, and failing to meet another one of the permit limits. The point is that the land application permit, as I said, the wastewater will not stay where it is supposed to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. Michelle Camp.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing Brian to go first. We wanted to split up our letter in respect to time constraints. So I'm a board member of Save Barton Creek Association and sharing our concerns, but I also am here to express my own concerns as a former longtime resident. So I grew up on Little Bear Creek, and I still go and spend most weekends on the creek, hiking it on our family patio overlooking the creek. So still spend a lot of time there. And after I graduated from Hayes High School, I went on to UT Austin to study environmental science. And after that, I went on to earn my master's in environmental management with a specialization in water science and management. I share these credentials because I understand our local hydrological and hydrogeological systems, as well as the adverse impacts to water quality in the streams and wells in northern Hayes County all the way to Barton Springs Pool in Austin that the proposed Hayes Common development poses. So from a local perspective, I'm very concerned. To pick up where Brian left off regarding specific threats, there are a couple more items I wanted to cover, which is that treated wastewater that he referred to can seep into the aquifer through recharge features. So the TCEQ has banned the use of subsurface drip irrigation for TLAP systems on the recharge zone for this reason. However, the alternative, dispersal by surface sprayers, can have all of the problems outlined earlier by Brian. The unique karst limestone structure of the Edwards Aquifer means that there's very little filtering of the water. The water that's pulled out of the aquifer by the wells is only as good as the water that seeps into the aquifer. Again, the track record for discharge plants and indicated in our letter doesn't inspire confidence that TLAP plants will always release the cleanest possible wastewater. TCEQ includes limits on the amount of E. coli bacteria that can remain in wastewater after treatment, but again, as our letter indicates, many discharge plants exceed this limit. So it's worth remembering that E. coli isn't a problem by itself, it's measured because it's a marker that indicates the presence of other fecal pathogens. There's also the problem of other contaminants of emerging concern, a broad category that includes pharmaceuticals, personal care products, and hormone-disrupting medication. All of these are present in wastewater, and they're not currently removed by the treatment process, which presents additional concerns. The final topic here is that impervious cover from the development, the proposed development, will create stormwater runoff pollution. So even the rocky soil of the hill country can absorb a substantial amount of rainfall where it falls, and the absorption is prevented when the soil is blanketed with impervious cover from houses, buildings, streets, what we're seeing with this proposed development. This rain will pick up whatever's on the surfaces where it falls, whether that's roofing chemicals, automotive liquids, trash debris, and other contaminants. All of this to say that SPCA and myself as an individual, we strongly recommend the members of the Hays Board of Aldermen delay any vote on this request until they've been able to consult other engineers and experts and scientists who are knowledgeable about wastewater problems in our area. We'd be happy to provide introductions to local experts, and we appreciate you listening to us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Mr. David Von Heusen. That wrong.
It's Van Huysen, but I'm used to having it butchered, so. Well, I'm not sure if this is the right place to do this. I just heard about this afternoon, and I hoped it would be someplace where I could come and give some questions to the developer. And I have 5 dealing with water resources. First, I understand you're looking to local groundwater for your water supply. As drought continues to plague this region, more straws in the aquifer in this area will impact the spring flow, and thus perhaps mandate curtailments in groundwater use. So have you looked at building scale rainwater harvesting as composing any part of your water supply? 2, wastewater management will be a critical issue, as we've heard here, and we have to get smarter about how we do this. And one thing we need to do is stop talking about disposal of perceived nuisance and start talking about utilization of this water resource. And so I'm wondering if, well, because TCQ has banned drip dispersal over the recharge zone, you have to disperse the water via spray irrigation has been discussed. And I would assert that subsurface drip irrigation is much more environmentally benign, or can be done much more environmentally benign than spray. This is likely to retard any actual beneficial irrigation with this wastewater, because that would be in spaces that would be irrigated as a matter of course in any case, like front yards, parkways, and parks. And people are likely to not look too kindly on having that surface sprayed. Subsurface drip would be a much better way to do that. And so I'm wondering, have you looked at trying to deal with TCEQ to have them lift that discharge ban, given that it wasn't rooted in any actual hazard, rather only in that these things were called Class 5 injection wells with no hazard analysis at all, and so that irrigation reuse might be fully pursued. Then have you considered a decentralized concept wastewater management strategy, treating and reusing this water resource in or near the neighborhood where it's generated, so minimizing your upfront costs to put service in place for each phase of development on a just-in-time basis, and obviating the huge cost of facilities that do nothing but move that stuff around. 4, have you considered applying the reclaimed water to commodity crop production? Perhaps you've seen the large array of greenhouses just south of Fort Davis, where a lot of hothouse tomatoes are produced, many of them being sold right around here. There's also a fodder production system that I've heard about. It would produce high-quality fodder for cattle, the production of which, in developments like this, may help ranchers retain herds through droughts that stunt the production of hay. And indeed, it may allow some hay fields and maybe grazing land too to be fallowed and maybe enhanced, like say on Bamberger Ranch, to restore spring flows. And 5th, will the stormwater management system be rooted in distributed LID practices like rain gardens? Have you looked into the prospects of those devices?
Time's up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John and Vida? Vida?
Yeah, I indicated that, we just came to listen.
Oh, okay.
Willing to participate and comment at a later point.
Thank you. This is your time to participate, though. This is your, okay, all right. All right, Ms. Catherine Nichols, now you can approach the stand.
Thank you for having this workshop opportunity to speak about this important development in our area. I live in Chaparral Park, and as you've heard from other people, there are many wells there, community wells and private wells that would be affected by too much use of the aquifer that didn't allow existing wells to have service anymore. Primarily, so many people have said great things about what needs to be considered, and I just want to add my opposition to too much increased residential density that would affect both the water quality and the water quantity, that the surface application has potential to get into the aquifer, as you've heard, that there's documentation of karst features on the property that would be a risk to the quality of the aquifer's water. And I think that there are too many proposed changes to the agreement to let it just be slightly modified, or modified, and it needs to be something that gets started all over again, it seems to me. And the traffic is a concern, and if there was any way to tie into Austin water and wastewater, that would certainly be a solution that I think would be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, next is Janine Tinsley.
I'm ready to talk to you guys too. Janine Tinsley, I live in Chaparral Park. I have not been involved with this because of my anger issues about situations like this. First of all, I used to work in ecological restoration. I've also been with the crew who developed guidelines for sustainable development. I know it's possible. I know it can be done. I have also worked on the committee with the initial development regulations developed for Hays County. I have seen time and time again housing developments just pushed through with not enough consideration. Everything that everybody has said here, I'm not going to repeat. You know your stuff, and you know your stuff, and you know your stuff. Just use common sense, please. We have got to be more in tune with our environment and our people who live off the environment. We cannot let corporations just come in and tell us what to do and then, or set up an agreement of this is what we're going to do and then start changing it. I have seen that happen time and time again. And so basically I'm just here to let you know that
There's a lot of people who are not in agreement with this, and please just slow down. That's all we're asking, just slow down, get more input, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Theresa Lemon?
Hi, I'm Teresa Lemon. I've lived in the city of Hayes for 42 years. And I wanted to talk just briefly, and this is really directed toward Milestone. I'm a fair trade importer. That means for the whole supply chain, beginning with the artisan, I try and do what is fair and ethical. The reason I talk about this is I've been in India probably for the last 15 years, and I've seen villages that have no water and really bad water quality. And I don't need to describe to you the hardship that has occurred on these people. At the last meeting, I spoke against the mud, but I realized later that I really needed to think about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the damage, the eventual damage that will continue to our aquifer. Because we use wells in the city of Hayes, we're at high risk that we could lose our well water systems and or our water supply. I think about India when I look at that picture. One of my problems with Milestone is trust. A number of years ago, Milestone built a development across from my roommate from college. I've been her best friend for 50 years. Milestone built a small condo project on Del Cuarto Road. Because of the way they built it, it flooded her home. She immediately approached Milestone and was not only treated rudely, but they would not acknowledge the damage that they had done until her property flooded again. It ended up in court. Kathleen won. She did collect the monies that she deserved, but it was a trust issue. I personally was involved in many of the meetings and listened carefully to the things that Milestone tried to do to her by having larger lawyers, more powerful, and did not care about the individual. And for that, I, at this point, don't trust Milestone. Everything to me is ethical. It's doing the right thing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Mike Clifford?
Good evening. I'm Mike Clifford, Technical Director with the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance. We're an environmental nonprofit organization that advocates for protection and preservation of the Edwards Aquifer, its springs, waterways, and watersheds. We are recommending against approval of the proposed Hayes Commons mud agreement and the Hayes Commons development as currently proposed by Milestone. Our objections are in three specific areas: lot size, impervious cover, and wastewater disposal. All three of these areas as currently proposed by Milestone are in violation of the Save Our Springs ordinance and existing Hayes development codes, and will likely be strongly opposed by the City of Austin, Travis County, and Central Texas environmental groups. The most recent similar proposed development, Jeremiah Ventures, was tied up for 6.5 years in legal wrangling between the developer and the above-mentioned entities, and it never achieved completion. The reason I'm standing here is to try to convince the City of Hayes and Milestone not to follow a similar path as Jeremiah Ventures did. There's a reason why we oppose developments like Hayes Commons as it's currently proposed over the recharge zone. It's an environmentally sensitive area with multiple karst features, faults, and fractures in the landscape that provide a direct pathway to groundwater into Barton Springs. The proposed sewage disposal method is to land apply 40 to 50,000 gallons per day of treated sewage effluent at the confluence of Little Bear Creek and a tributary, which could lead to treated sewage runoff into the tributary and Little Bear Creek, and the subsequent pollution of the aquifer, and by extension, Barton Springs. Numerous dye tracing studies have been done confirming this pathway from Little Bear Creek to the aquifer to Barton Springs. The The proposed 1/4 and 1/3 acre lot sizes need to be brought into compliance with, at a minimum, the existing 3/4 acre Hayes County code. Second, Milestone wants what appears to be at least 30% impervious cover, double the 15% impervious cover limits in the Hayes Code and SOS ordinance. Finally, Milestone needs to redo their wastewater plan for environmental protection, employing green infrastructure to ensure that any land application of sewage effluent is sited and treated to ensure optimal water quality, and that all significant recharge features are protected by adequate buffer zones. Serious consideration should be given to wastewater disposal away from the recharge zone. Only when these three conditions are met should the City of Hayes even consider moving forward with this development. We urge the Hayes City Council to decline the current Hayes Commons MUD as is currently written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford. Okay, Ms. Darlene Starr.
Dear Mayor Mayfies and Honorable Alderman, I'm reading a letter on behalf of Save Our Springs. On behalf of Bill Lunch, who couldn't be here right now, he's teaching. This letter was previously submitted to the Hayes City Council. Dear Mayor Mayfies and Honorable Alderman, it is our understanding that the City of Hayes Board of Aldermen is currently considering a request from Milestone Builders to amend the existing Hayes Commons Development Agreement and to grant consent to Milestone to the creation of a new municipal utility district. It is further our understanding that Milestone's request would both increase density of development and contemplate the treatment and irrigation of municipal wastewater over the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. Both of these actions would threaten to pollute nearby drinking water wells, of which there are many, the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer and Barton Springs. These threats are real and should be considered. With direct input from the affected stakeholders and from the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer District and the City of Austin's water experts. Save Our Springs Alliance only recently learned of these proposals being considered by you. We were not able to locate any of the relevant documents on the City of Hayes website. Thus, we regret that you may consider these comments to be untimely or of limited value. However, please know that we have worked for almost 30 years with scientists, lawyers, engineers, and citizens to protect the waters of the Barton Spring Edwards Aquifer. For roughly half of these years, we have on occasion stood against the excessive development proposed by Walters Southwest on these same lands at or near the intersection of 45 and 1626. During this time, we actively proposed and played a key role in stopping the proposed Jeremiah Ventures wastewater irrigation fields that would have been located over the recharge zone a few miles south and west of the City of Hayes and the proposed Hayes Commons development. Had that proposal gone through, water wells in the Hayes City area would have most certainly been contaminated. There is simply no safe way to irrigate treated wastewater on the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. Given the opportunity, I believe our consulting scientists and the scientists from the BSEACD and the City of Austin will be able to demonstrate to you why this is so. Yet, as I understand, your proposed actions would both approve and help finance this unsafe method of managing treated wastewater that would be generated by the proposed Hayes Commons development. We ask that you step back from these proposals until such time as all relevant documents are made available to the public, to SOS Alliance, to the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer District, to the City of Austin, and to Hayes County, and you have the opportunity to hear from these stakeholders and their experts and from others who would address the full range of economic, environmental, and other effects that may flow from your decisions. Considering the limited resources available to the City of Hayes and the regional impacts of your decisions on these issues, it is especially important that you seek the advice and assistance of these entities and possibly others, in addition to considering the well-informed input from your own citizens and nearby neighbors. Thank you in advance for your consideration. Sincerely, Bill Lunch.
Thank you. All right, everyone, thank you so much for the input. Mr. Don Ross-Schubert, do you want to give some backstory before we start talking about some points on here, the history of the development agreement, so on.
More than happy to. Good evening, everyone. Thank y'all for coming out tonight. Appreciate it very much. City Council does too. So my first involvement with this particular development started probably in 2008-ish, where the first meeting with Walter Southwest and other city representatives, where it was sort of generally discussed about a development and waiting on SH-45 to be constructed to give it the connectivity needed from a developer standpoint. And then the 2008 housing crash happened, right? And we were down from a development standpoint, development were down for about 2 years, to recover from the housing crash that occurred in 2008. And that's, so it puts us in about 2010, 2011 period. That's where serious discussions between the city and Walter Southwest began. And they were eventually culminated into a contract, what's called a developer agreement. And the city had very specific terms that had to be met in that agreement. And one example in the agreement, it's limited to 22% impervious cover on the property to be developed. None of the property south of Little Bear Creek is to be developed. There was no discussion of TLAP on the original agreement. Walter Southwest is a commercial developer. He did this development in Sunset Valley with all the Brody Oaks area, Brody Lane area. Then agreement was agreed to by the council. It was passed September 13, 2013. September 13, 2013. And it rocked along for a while. There was still no development. There was still talk. The agreement includes only the land from the city standpoint that's in the city's ETJ. And that's about of that particular tract of land, that's about 230 acres. The full agreement was really addressing areas to the north of the city's ETJ that was called the Austin 50-acre tract. That's in the Austin's ETJ. Then there was some other tract looked at and brought in from the developer side, from the city side, along Blissfiller, north of Blissfiller Road. Maybe single family there. But being a commercial development under the original agreement, it was intended to about have 103, 115 acres of commercial development with big box stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, HEBs, retail supportive, restaurant supportive. So it's more, almost all commercial. There was 41 lots or so that would load off of Carpenter Lane that would be single family, large lots with on-site septic systems and probably wells to supply them. The original agreement was talk about extending a water line from the main commercial development to those 41 tracts, along with an emergency interconnect for the city of Hayes. It could come off that particular line. That rocked along. Nothing really happened. There was a lot, other than a lot of negotiations between Austin and Walter Southwest. I was involved in 3 different meetings in that period of time. Along with city officials, were all involved as well. Too much actually, I apologize. Along with city officials, we're all involved with those meetings. Austin does basic plan. My concept and memory is they didn't want to, that area from 45 is sort of dividing. You get on this side of 45, then their water and wastewater plan didn't include extending service to the west side of 45. And it's an impact fee thing. It gets into a lot of the other policies that Austin adopted. So they were very difficult, basically non-productive negotiations. Again, I only sit in 3 meetings. There were some counter offers, but they never went anywhere. So then COVID hit. And then we were shut down for basically 2 years in the development market. And then what resulted out of the COVID, besides a lot of sickness and death, is it killed the retail industry. It took, you know, the retail market in terms of big box stores, except for Lowe's or Home Depots where people were home and want to buy a lot of, you know, lumber and repair equipment and that sort of thing, materials. Basically, the restaurant stores, the hotels, all that supportive industry, you got a knife in the heart, per se. And that may be coming back a little bit, but it created this thing, what's called the Amazon effect, where people buy more online. My wife does, and it just drives me crazy. She sits there on her little iPad at night and just drives me crazy. But, so that retail component kind of all went away. And then the developments, and by the way, the 2013 agreement is in place today. It's still active and effective. Given all the changes we've seen, there's got to be modifications because of the market. So the property now is kind of in the hands of Milestone, who I've always heard was a good developer, and I know Jeff hired, you know, I go back quite a ways, he's kind of about my age, is primarily a residential developer. And that's really when the first time the city heard about TLAP. Because if Austin were going to serve, and this development were to go, it would have to have its own on-site water and wastewater system. And that's when Walter Southwest drilled 3 deep Trinity wells on the property just on the south side of the west side of 45. And the district was real interested in as well because you could learn more about the geology and the hydraulics of the deep Trinity. Wells are like 1,700 foot wells, if I remember correctly, 1,700 foot deep wells. Apparently they get some good water, quality-wise and volume-wise. I was invited at one time to look at a drilling rig they were drilling with at BP's Drilling. But I don't think the district's permitted anything other than drilling permits at this point in time, is that correct? So there's no production permits that have been authorized by the Park and Springs District, and that's one of the regulatory agencies that this project has to go through if it stays on ground rules, sort of thing. The TLAP, certain discussions were started in the Walter Southwest era about applying TLAP application for the commercial track, which is much lower volume than wastewater, on the City of Hayes side of the creek, the south side of the Boulevard Creek. And that has a lot of components to it. Environmental components, groundwater concern components, that all have to be weighed and spun out and vetted on how to move forward with a project like that. I think the rules allow it. The TCEQ rules, the water code allows TLAP over the recharge zone, but it has to be sprayed. You can't subsurface dispose it. So you've got the regulatory base you have to move through as well. So there's been a lot of discussions. We have a new council. As councils change with time, right? And new members involved. You've got a new sort of development group involved with it. If we can get them all together, we can get to an end that's satisfactory. But I think my main closing point is that there is agreement in place today, and it can be exercised today. And that's why we have great attorneys like Veronica and Barbara. As it would go through, we have had discussions with Walter Southwest, 1 or 2 discussions with Milestone about doing a restated agreement between Milestone, Walter Southwest, and the new partnership, and the city are throwing out the old 2013 agreement. You know what? Those are ongoing. And we would have had any more meetings since, I guess, for a while together. But anyway, that's sort of the history. I hope that helps a little bit understand what got us to here today.
Don, do you know the date that the agreement expires?
Yes, sir.
What the date the agreement expires?
The agreement expires in 2023, probably September 13, 2023, if the preliminary plat is not filed. Milestone has filed a preliminary plat with the city, and I'm reviewing that. It'll probably be on the November agenda for the council. Now, if it's approved, or it's filed, right, it's filed with the city, then the agreement extends for about a 5-year period or so after that.
You referred to large lots, residential lots?
Yes, sir.
What is a large lot in your terminology?
Acre and a half lots. And I think that's pretty much the same concept at Milestone on the Carpenter Lane.
Mr. Roshuber, no, Mr. Roshuber,
Yes.
this isn't, we're not taking questions.
Oh, we're not taking, I'm sorry, we're not taking.
I have a question, it was just a clarification.
Thank you very much.